everyone. Welcome to another Collegiate Conversation, a space for conversations with missionaries from around the Collegiate Church Network. My name is Mike, and today we are joined by three wonderful missionaries from around the network, and I will let them take a moment to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Bondi. I serve at New Life Ann Arbor and have been on staff there since 2013.
Cool. My name is Alan Hobley. I'm on staff at Aligning Life Christian Fellowship at the University of Illinois. Been there for almost 11 years, and I also help direct one of the LT programs in Estes Park, so you might know me from that.
Sarah Stewart, and I'm currently serving in San Antonio, Texas at University of Texas of San Antonio at Taproot Church. I've been on staff 19 years. A lot of those years were at Texas A&M, and we church planted here 2017. So
fantastic. Thank you all for joining today. Today, our conversation is on making disciples and multiplication, which is a massive conversation that I'm sure we are regularly considering and thinking about, and we all have various experiences, but I'm guessing there's a through line too of us learning to follow Jesus and help other students to do that. And I'm excited to hear what the Lord has given you all today. Before we jump into some of our experiences, could you each share a little bit of what this looks like for you in your current context right now personally? What does discipleship look like? Maybe you're really hands-on with students. Maybe you're in a more of a director and coaching role. Maybe it looks a little bit different, but I'd love to just kind of hear for those who are watching so we can get it oriented with each other, just what that looks like on kind of day-to-day.
Sure, I can start to keep the order going. I co-camps direct at New Life, and so some of what this looks like right now, given pandemic season, has been trying to use the time, if I have time, that's been hindered by up north, at least, like bad weather, keeping people inside and not too many things happening inside, trying to think about kind of our systems and our structures and our spaces for how we make disciples in our church, and trying to keep thinking about that and making sure that we have intentionality behind what we do. And so just working on our kind of systems, how we do ministry, I suppose. So spending a good amount of time doing that. And frankly, right now, it's just going on walks with students as much as possible, not having end times planned, just walking and talking together about life and what the Lord is doing. So honestly, my feet feel like hurt from yesterday, and I was not doing a lot of walking for a while. I just came off of paternity leave, so I was not walking a ton, was just staying inside. Now I'm out with people, but it's been really life-giving, really good.
Thanks, Ryan. Sarah, how about you willing to go next?
yeah, so my current role is I'm partly a grad student, so I'm actually with students a lot. I'm a grad student here at this university, actually.
Nice.
We do a lot of online, of course, right now because of the pandemic. So they're not directly in our context, our church context, but I get to have a lot of good conversations about life and counseling, and just we're all going to be future counselors. So, and then my other roles are really on the senior leadership team with the pastors here. So we're just talking a lot about pivoting every moment and how to, we're in Texas, so we can meet outside a good bit, which is nice, but in the spring we get rained out a ton. So a lot of it is like just week to week, how do we have this space for students? And I do some discipling with like the leaders of leaders. So currently I meet with one of the women who's in the home group with my husband, and they lead a student home group. So I do a lot of that discipleship and multiplication with her as she's pouring out with students. And then for me, it's a lot of like the highways and byways when they're at my house and, talking about life, or they're playing with my kids. And we actually have one of our students living with us. So tons of life on life. And she's currently support raising to become an intern here. Which is cool. So we get to give her all of our MTD stories and, help build her faith. And then my other main discipleship role is for a woman who is hoping to go overseas in the next couple years. So she's a newlywed, and so we do a lot of life together and discipling and just talking about things. So that's kind of my main. She was a student back at A&M actually.
Okay.
And came here on the church plant. So
there are a lot of layers there. I'm excited to hear some of what you've been learning. Alan.
Yeah. Our staff team has shrunk quite a bit in the past few years. And so there is probably a lot more need for on the ground with people. I think because of the aforementioned pandemic, I think that's felt tricky. I think you guys have all hinted at that. But because of my roles, like I am our director of our small groups, I see our small group leaders as primarily my small group as the people who I'm building into the most, hopefully try to check in with them. We have some coaches as well that help them along. So it is more ministry skills and equipping in that context. But we also have, as a church, been really continuing to use 3DM's huddle materials. If you guys are familiar with it, I really believe in the concept of, I think more and more discipleship. I think it's what people would call spiritual direction, but I just feel like, well, I'm going to call it discipleship. Like helping students figure out what God is saying to them and then what they're going to do about it has just been, I think, a game changer for us as a ministry. And so I lead a group of guys through that material, but also just through a lot of the hope of life on life access, I think is the ultimate way of making disciples, just seeing other people walk with Jesus. So those are a couple of things that probably think of right away.
Yeah, Alan, I have to say, I 3DM, we went to a couple of our campus leaders went to a 3DM conference and heard them share on some of those principles. We were essentially able to adapt the essence of that. And you said game changing for how we make disciples, and I would agree. That was really, really helpful stuff.
Yeah, for me, I know it. I think I thought of discipleship, and it's not untrue, but I think I thought of it more as mentoring. Like, let me give you some good advice from my life. But I think when I've learned to disciple, to point people towards Jesus, and then I'll fill in where you're not hearing from the Lord. I think that's how it's changed it for us. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
yeah, I mean, a lot of. I love that that by the Spirit we have access to the Lord. We just have the ability to hear from God. That's crazy, and all of us can, and the Lord is leading all of us. And so it's just the framework that surprised me was just, oh yeah, if we could have everyone regularly asking how the Lord is getting their attention in life and how they can respond to that obediently with other people, I think we would have people taking steps of faith regularly. Versus hoping they just catch something in a Bible study and that produces fruit in their life. And so I'm like, oh, what a curated program of discipleship, of having people go to the Lord and developing that relationship. So, yeah.
I remember thinking early on in my staff life when I was meeting with women, and I thought about it just with our church context. I was like, if all I do, and this isn't to oversimplify it, but if all they leave with is the ability to hear from God, then I feel like I've done my job. That's the feeling of you can give a lot of skills and tools, and of course they're going to have trials, but man, if they can be attuned to who Jesus is and God's voice in their life and how to even bring it in the context of community and the word and their circumstances and peace, gosh, that's I feel like, okay, they'll thrive, or they'll be able to go and do the things he's asking them to do, So
yeah,
not to oversimplify, but feeling oh, if anything, I don't want to give all the other things and not that, because it would feel like, oh wow, that would be so lacking in their life,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this wave is already rolling, so I'm bracing onto the surfboard because the momentum is there. So I'm excited for where this is going. And even before that conversation, hearing where each of you are working and serving right now, it is clear that we're covering a pretty wide spectrum from having kids of your own to working with students to even the years of ministry that you all have piled up. But then this last part I'm really excited about too, because it seems to be that that's what the essence of what we want to do, right? If we're making disciples, it's not of ourselves. We're making disciples of Jesus, right? We want people to be following Jesus. And so I'm excited that that's already where this is running away in a really good way. And so we've mentioned the pandemic. It's part of why we're meeting on Zoom right now, and we haven't gotten to see each other face to face. In this process, what are some of the things in making disciples and helping people figure out how God's getting their attention? It seemed like at times it was almost overwhelming. There were so many things to be getting people's attention with, oh my goodness, everything's online, and almost a bit of a system overload. That's some of my experience. But for you all in how you've had to pivot this year, that's a word I think we've all become very familiar with as well. What are some of those challenges and experiences you all have had in this last year in helping students discern how God is getting their attention and what it looks like them to follow Jesus?
Yeah, I feel like one of the hardest things I kept coming up against was nothing was happening. Like there are no new things going on. I'm used to it going like a week of time going between meeting with a college student and so much happening. Like just the how many relationships they have and how many different things they do. Like, man, they need to catch me up, right? And there just like wasn't a lot of that. I would get time with people, like try to find ways to do that, even if it were, on Zoom again. And it was kind of like not much was new. And yet they're still human and they're still having an experience of what it looks like to follow Jesus in that environment. And it kept being about how to be faithful with the little things. What does your life look like? What are your habits? Like, what are your personal habits? Like, which ones have gone? Which ones have you developed? Do you want those habits? So that's been a lot of what we've been thinking about, because so much has been stripped away. There's been more opportunity to talk about our own personal habits and what we give ourselves to and our time to, and being more thoughtful about that, instead of just like, oh yeah, I guess I have been on my phone for so long today. And that's just that just creeps in over time as there's less and less to do. But to be more mindful of that and to notice those things. So it's been noticing those smaller things and trying to even give those things to the Lord and have conversations with that, because there's not much else to talk about.
Yeah, and some of that, it's felt like I wondered if that's a good thing. Like we talked about it locally here, like, well, maybe the fact that there's less programs, it sort of forces people to have to work on their own walk with God versus us providing things. So I think there's been some strength to that. But I've also seen people really struggle, and I've seen students walk away in this season. I think a lot of it is pandemic driven. I think the challenges I feel that are probably related to that are some of the just like the life on life losses, the shooting the breeze after worship, the hanging out longer and lingering after small group instead of the awkward Zoom goodbye where everybody says it at once and leaves at once. Like just those things that I think they create a sense of belonging when you have those inside jokes and those callbacks to conversations of a couple weeks ago and stuff like that. I miss that. I mean, Sarah, you mentioned it with like seeing our family together. Like we have 2 kids. I'm married. My wife's on staff, Ashley. Like just seeing our family together, I think, is a huge discipleship tool we have, and we don't get to use that as much.
Yeah.
I was thinking, we're again being down here. San Antonio is actually quite strict with regulations, or UTSA. But because we live right across from the campus, oh, look at that guy.
Speaking of the kids.
Gosh, he's so big from LT 2 years ago. Wow.
I know.
But, my husband, we have had in-person home group, small group in our home since August. And they all wear masks, and they all, so that in-person part, I think, is really helped this year. But I can say for those who are pouring out to the students, I think the difficulty has been in their energy levels of like how to keep people kind of going when there's all these other like stressors that are like weighing, that are kind of invisible. And just where it's just more burnout, I think.
Mhm.
And I think people were especially feeling it in like April, May, June, when they've been running and running. You know how college ministry is, running, and then it's like a halt. And then you realize, I am so dead tired. Like I am like, and then there was the collective grief and stress. And again, like I was saying, the invisible part, and not so invisible, everything happening in our world, in our country, like starting at that point. So that's where I feel like some of the conversations revolve around that too, of like, how do you receive Jesus's rest, but yet you are called by God, you aren't quitting right now. And so I think the other thing is that this is highlighted, honestly, like sin in students, like just coping. Like, we call it coping, the Bible calls it sin. There's a lot of things that it's really highlighted, like when they have nothing to do, there's no, they're more prone to kind of like those kind of places. And if they aren't able to gather as much, the support systems are low. But it's been really precious to even, one of our staff was doing what we call roots. And she asked, what does it mean to follow Jesus right now? Like just in the pandemic. And one of them was just really pure hearted to say, like, I have to actually look at my sin. Like it's like right in front of me, and many of them are sleeping till 3 p.m. And, when you don't have any classes to go to, that's kind of dangerous for a freshman, freshman and sophomore trying to follow Jesus, but like no routines, no schedule. So even that, like Brian was saying, all the little things of like habits and routine and stuff we kind of take for granted for our infrastructures. So I'd say a lot of conversations revolve around those types of things.
Yeah, let's dive in on that part a little bit more. One thing, I don't know if you guys had a chance to see, but Jay talked with the Smiths, Mike and Tammy, back in the fall, and they called the season The Revealing.
Yes.
And that gave me such clear language of that's what's happening. Everything is getting revealed, even the stuff we've been intentionally hiding and not dealing with, and then the stuff that we're like, I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah.
And we like to think that sometimes we have the equippings to maybe handle a little bit, but then we're dealing with that. And also these students who are suddenly having things revealed about themselves and the world. And it requires a lot of truth telling, right? Like everything you guys are saying it's confession. It's, oh my goodness. Yeah. I spent 4 hours on TikTok and I didn't even make a TikTok. I was just watching TikTok and I couldn't even tell you the last TikTok I watched or what have you. And what has that been like in your different spheres in your lives to dive into those spaces of, I guess, bringing light to darkness?
Well, I feel like, discipleship and just being in people's lives, we dance a line of like empathy, and this is my counselor talk, but we have empathy and we have those things of like, man, yeah, that's really hard. And then the line of the truth telling of like, and the pandemic can make it feel like we just want to be all empathy, or like if we might feel bad that we're kind of stepping in these harder places. But I feel like, man, now more than ever, especially a year into it now, like this is the time those conversations can still be had with gentleness and grace, but just to say, okay, now that the great revealing is here, what are we going to do? Like what is another choice that we can make? So that's just a thought that came to mind.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
I mean, maybe it's more of a thought off of your, Sarah. Like I think empathy has definitely been the way I feel like I'm leading in interactions with people, and I think I'm probably a higher on invitation and relationship than challenge person in general. Like it's probably been a good part of the revealing for myself in those things. And so I don't know if I have any clear thoughts on what darkness has caused me to step in, other than I think recalibrating that is darkness. I think for a lot of college students, particularly, it's easy. I mean, us in campus ministry, there's plenty of stuff that just feels like we're not dealing with the hardest challenges of society for the most part. And so to see them laid bare in this season, I think has led to more fruitful conversations about the world around us. Not necessarily in people's lives explicitly, but we've been able to talk about issues of inequity and issues of justice in ways that we probably haven't been able to
Yeah.
as easily.
Yeah. I feel like it is often coming down to, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Are you content with how your life is? Are you content with how you are? Are you content with every day like being on repeat? Or like, if that's the case, how is your life? Is it what the Lord would want for you? Or is there something else? And I mentioned this, but I just came off of paternity leave, and one of the illustrations I've been able to bring to people, and it's felt like it's been timely, has been in these moments of, I have a bad day, I'm impatient with my wife, my kids, I'm quick to anger, lashing out, and I just lay my head on my pillow at the end of the day with both frustration continuing and the shame of that kind of response. And I see the future. I can see like if this day repeats itself for 20 years, I know dads and husbands like that. Like, I know that dad and husband, and I don't want to be that dad and husband. And so like the best I can do is try to stay in the fight and to repent and to apologize and keep engaging and invite accountability in my life and not give up. And so that kind of like thinking has been pretty profound for me, and trying to invite that, for other people to think about how you live your life today. Is there something that you want, that you need to change? And I think people have been, it's just, there's like the revealing, there's less hiding. You can't hide from yourself as easily right now. And it's a great time to notice those things and be like, does the Lord have something better? And I feel especially the older students are seeing that and responding well in ways that I'm not used to, like very mature things. And that's been some good fruit of pressing into the darkness, I found.
Thanks for sharing a bit of just your own story, Ryan. I appreciate that a lot. And that is a helpful question. Is this trajectory the trajectory I want to be on? Do we and then do we believe that Jesus has more than we could even hope for, imagine? Not necessarily in the American dream sort of way, but in like true life, that he really does have life for us. And are we willing to say yes and go after him in that? To kind of turn it to what is some of the life we have been seeing? I'm curious if you all have some stories of what you have seen. We talked about the revealing, but I've also begun to see this sense. It's been a year, but in my own life, in ministry around here in Kalamazoo, we're starting to see green. We're starting to see those moments, Ryan, like you mentioned, of I've never seen a junior respond this way before. And it's clear that Jesus is calling people after himself, and they're saying yes. So I'm curious if you all have any other stories that you could offer, just as encouragement of, yes, the Lord is making his disciples.
Something recently that's come to mind is from our student camping trip that just happened. And probably 2 or 3 of the students, this is just the best thing that they could ever realize coming to college. They were like, man, in my youth group, I was like kind of awesome, like I kind of was like on my game, like really great Christian. And they're like, and then I came to college and I joined this group, us, and I just realized like how much I need to grow. And to me, that is such a humble, like, and this is where I like to, probably cry, but I feel like the Lord really esteems that spirit in a student, in a 19-year-old, to say, wow, I'm kind of nothing, like but not like in a grovelly sort of like false humility, or I'm just going to leave Jesus. It's like oh wow, he's so much. And I'm like, just like John says in John 3, like, I must decrease, he must increase. That feeling of like they already realize they have decreased just crossing over to a university from high school, And I think to me, that just is so much life growing from that place, that Jesus can really work with them. And they would be on such a good trajectory with him, realizing that at such a young age, So it's really
That's beautiful. Thanks, Sarah.
I mean, I don't know if I'm just going to I'm going to talk about staff, like not necessarily even with students. Like I think we as a staff team, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, like it has been a season, particularly, and I think all of our churches had their own hardships in different ways, but we had a lot of hardships prior to this season. And I think the pandemic has actually given us a chance to slow down and almost we're still doing stuff, but it's felt a little bit of like a sabbatical for our church, to reset, to refresh, to work on our issues as staff in ministry. Like I think all of us, maybe except for you, Sarah, went into ministry with mixed motives. I'm kidding. Like I think to be able to work through those motives a decade in or a few years in has been really helpful for us in our own walk with God. I think this season's been a season we've seen all over, right, in the church, where there's been a revealing of the church, and how we have maybe idolized poor ways to lead and things like that. And so I think this season's been really helpful for that. And I think it's been I don't know if it would have happened without the pandemic, interpersonally and personally, and I think corporately as a team. I think those are all the different dynamics I've seen growth towards Jesus.
The Lord is still moving. I think that's what's encouraging to me, is it's not just, it's like we've seen people come to faith purely through digital, means. Like just by interacting like this, people have come to know the Lord. Like I heard someone in a staff team yesterday say, oh man, I hope they choose to come here in the fall and like to finally meet them after like leading them to the Lord. It's like crazy that is a world we live in. So that's happening. Sarah, like you said, everything being stripped away, I think for people who are still around, there's a posture of humility, like greater humility. And that's so important, right? Like what is it? Like the Greek for disciple is learner, then like humility is so important. So there's that stuff. I mean, there's that stuff like going on, but at the same time, just what I've been encouraged by has been the story. I mean, a wild story, and I'm sure you all can relate with this, of like what the Lord is doing in our churches, that even the pandemic, he is like even using that in ways to bring about greater life. And so this pandemic season, for all that it's been, as I look at like the past couple chapters and what it seems like the next chapter and what the Lord is doing in our church and our ministry, just fits right in. Like it just feels like, oh yeah, this makes total sense as an outflow of what's been going on before. In fact, I feel prepared in a lot of ways. We made a lot of ministry changes that like worked perfectly for us going into having to switch to online. So I don't know. The Lord's doing stuff across the board. I think sometimes I feel like this pressure to be like, oh, the Lord's still doing like this kind of stuff, like, oh, people are still coming to know him. And like people are, kind of the traditional ways that you measure like ministry success. But he's just still telling the story. He's still doing that in each of our lives and in our church. And that's encouraging to me because nothing can get in the way of that.
That's good. Well, we're coming near the end of our time, and so let's make that turn, looking ahead. All right, none of us know the future. None of us knows the next 5 minutes of this Zoom call even. But what are some of those things that you have learned this last year in your own discipleship, whatever you'd like to share, that you're looking forward to following Jesus in maybe your local ministry, whatever that context is? What is that thing you're saying, like, Lord, I think I see this and I'm excited to walk into it?
I'll just say, I love the question, man. I'm like, shoot, I'm like, oh, do I say all? Like, what do I say? I feel, one, just planting churches, to be honest. That's what I'm excited about. I feel like our just where the Lord has our staff team, and where we're at, I feel really excited about the people we have to develop and grow. And I feel excited to steward the resources we have well, to really like our whole church to invest in developing future church planters and worship leaders, and all these different people, and for people who are serving on campus on staff, to really be thinking about leaving a legacy, and building in and strengthening campus to be able to plant. So I feel like for years we've been pruning. It's been a long time for us of sifting through and repenting, and changing and hearing from the Lord, frankly, as a church, and repenting and trying to obey him together. And I was feeling kind of excited going in, like, about what last fall could be. And then I feel like the Lord was like, hold on, there's still a little bit more to be done. I trust his timing with it. And I'm feeling excited for what honestly, the next chapter of our church and ministry could look like.
Yeah, Ryan, maybe real similarly. I feel like every year there's like a bit more chopped off in the pruning. I'm like, when's this going to stop? At some point, we're like, well, we're down to the root. So,
Yeah.
I think there's a ton. We actually we're starting to talk about just hopes as a staff team just this past week for the next year, and I get really excited about the possibilities of the next year. I know this is very specific for our context, but like, I don't think we have any student leaders graduating. And so I think we have people who are experienced, who can continue to do it after pandemic, and really, I think, carry some momentum. I think we have our first interns in a decade or something like that who are interested, who are applying right now. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to go forward as a church. Those are like the logistics and things like that. I'm really excited about the pent up energy that people have had to be together. I hope that serves our student leaders who want to be together with people and want to be together, but I also hope it serves incoming freshmen who are like, man, I got to find something to do because I haven't done anything with people. So it feels a little bit like a year of caged college, like, and just ready to like let it out of the cage.
Yeah.
I'd say probably, there's a number of ways I could go with this, but in May, I'll be speaking at a women's conference, and I've been thinking a lot about perseverance and running the race with endurance. And I just really want us to remember, like, whatever endurance, let endurance have its perfect result, like in James, that you be mature and complete, lacking in nothing, that we would go forward remembering all the things that God did in us that was like real hidden, like things that are actually going to be where it could have felt like winter. Winter doesn't mean everything is dead. Like, things are actually still happening underneath. And so I feel like this pandemic has felt kind of like winter, just that, and it seems like as spring comes, and we don't really experience seasons down here in Texas. With our snowpocalypse, we finally did it. Everything looks like fall right now, and it's about to look like spring. So I just think that, like, all the places that look dead or pruned, that really truly this next year and the coming years, we're just going to see like exponential effects. And my hope in all of it is that where things have been stripped away, and sorry, y'all, I just get emotional talking about this, but when things get stripped away and we actually get to see Jesus, as things start to get put back on, as we become regular again or normal, like, I don't want us to miss him. Like, we have a lot of scaffolding and a lot of infrastructures that help us along, and sometimes, not always, we can miss him, and so my hope is that there's been enough this year of like how to see him, and then like how to keep seeing him as we get back to whatever we're doing, so those are just some thoughts.
Fantastic thoughts. And I can't think of anything better to say to end our time. There was deep gospel truth that we would not forget to see Jesus, because that's what it's about, of us following him so that we can also point others to him as well. Well, thank you, Alan, Ryan, and Sarah, for your time today. I feel kind of spoiled. I get these times to myself, and whether someone watches it or not, I get all this like almost free discipleship of my own. So thank you for discipling me a little bit today, pointing me to Jesus. And I trust that this was a gift for each of you too. Before I let you go though, I like to just throw a random curveball question in there that has nothing to do with our conversation, just to kind of get to know about each of you a little bit. And the question is simply, what is a piece of media you're enjoying right now? I was going to ask music, but some people don't necessarily listen to music. So maybe there's a TV show you're watching. Maybe there's an album you really like. What is a piece of media that you are enjoying that you would maybe recommend to the collegiate world?
Okay, I'm totally late to the party on this one, but y'all, The Chosen is amazing. It really is. I mean, everyone around us has watched it and they're like, guys, watch it. You go on dates, do it, you know? And the second season's coming out right after Easter, right before or right at Easter. But it is the best. I haven't watched a ton of Jesus films, you know, but it is, in my opinion, it is the most human, lifelike, like, and not cheesy. I'm just gonna put that plug. It's not cheesy. It's so good. It just makes the Gospels come alive so well. And I'm bummed. We might binge watch the first season again. Like we're already over with it, and I'm like, oh, sad. I want another. So,
Sarah, I kid you not. I literally just got a notification from the Bible app.
Yeah.
That says, watch Jesus's ministry come to life. Experience the life of Jesus in a fresh way. Watch all season 1 episodes of The Chosen.
Woo!
So,
is the Bible app listening to us?
Probably.
Does that mean Jesus is listening? You know, I don't know.
Jesus is listening to us right now. I really do.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm gonna have to watch it now. That I just saw that come down.
Here's my little disclaimer. Make it through the first episode. It's a little slow, but they do a lot of different characters development.
Yeah.
You got to make it to the very end of first episode. It'll hook you. I promise.
Okay,
that's great.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'll share something. Actually, this came from tangential recommendation from Michelle over at UTSA. Sarah, I've been listening to a podcast called Rebuilders. From a pastor in Australia. His name's Mark Sayers.
Oh, I love him.
So Rebuilders is I think his ongoing podcast. The recommendation was he's a part of a podcast called of course, let me find the name of it.
This cultural moment.
Yeah. This cultural moment. Yeah. So Rebuilders has a lot of the same themes. I think as far as somebody who I don't remember where I heard this from, but when I think about ministry, I think exegete the Bible, exegete the culture, and figure out how the Bible speaks to the culture. I think Sayers does a great job of exegeting the culture.
Fantastic.
And who doesn't love a good Australian accent for a little bit?
It's true.
Just saying.
It's great. Tease that I would recommend to the rest of the collegiate world. Like I was going into all sorts of different places, but once you said that, I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, no guilty pleasures.
Okay, let's see. I would recommend the Bible Project podcast. If you want like not just like master's degree, but like PhD level education about the Bible. Like, so I have a master's in biblical studies, and this stuff, just getting to listen to this stuff is just gold. So if you're not already familiar with the Bible Project, it's great, but it's Tim Mackey, John Collins, just discussing really normal things, but then there's just so much history. I'm just learning a ton. So if you want free master's level education in biblical studies, would recommend the Bible Project podcast.
And we use them a lot in our home groups, playing their YouTube videos of different Bible overviews, like book overviews. It's amazing.
Yeah,
the drawing, like all the artistry, like everything is just really awesome. So
yeah, they're fantastic. They do a lot of really great stuff. Well, I'll throw something in there because this wasn't mentioned. If you're looking for music, there's an album called 7 by the artist Judah. and it's fantastic. He is the lead singer of the band also called Judah and the Lion, but this is his solo project, and there is some gospel truth in there in a way that has been just powerful to be delivered through music, and the imagery that he uses is fantastic as well. So I will recommend that. And we will put links to those who are watching in the description below. One of the powers of YouTube.
Awesome.
Thank you everyone for joining for this collegiate conversation, and we will catch you next time.